This is Admiral Rob Bauer, chair of the NATO Military Committee, one of the top dogs in NATO, advising the planet that we need to prepare for World War III and that you need to start stockpiling stuff like there's no tomorrow. Let's see what he has to say.
You need to have water, you need to have a radio on batteries, and you need to have a flashlight on batteries to make sure that you can survive the first 36 hours. Things like that. That's
okay. Maybe I exaggerated a little bit. Apparently, after 36 hours into World War III, everything's going to be just fine. The government's going to save us all.
simple things, but it starts there. The realization that not everything is plannable, not everything is going to be hunky-dory in the next 20 years. I'm not saying it is going wrong tomorrow, but we have to realize it's not a given that we are in peace.
I'd have to agree with him with that statement because since World War II, the peace that we've been experiencing is exceptional. Never before throughout human history has there been as much peace, stability, and civility as there has been since World War II, in spite of the fact of all of the exported proxy wars that have happened since that time. Generally speaking, cheap energy, cheap labor, globalization have enabled us to have a relative state of peace and civility. I'll agree with that. Unfortunately, that's now coming to an end, and that's what he's saying here.
And that's why we have the plans. That's why we are preparing for a conflict with Russia and the terror groups, if it comes to it, if they attack us.
Oh, okay.
We're not seeking any conflict.
I thought we were the bad
But
guys.
if they attack us, we have to be ready.
That's a relief that he clarified that. Now, guys, I am going to break this down. We are going to dissect everything that he just said in this 50-second segment because there's so much of what he said that he did not say. Now, I'm not an expert, but I was a mental health professional for 15 years, and I'm not a human lie detector by any stretch of the means, but I'm fairly good at deciphering nonverbals. And I have a very good intuition about people in general. And I can tell you the points where he was being really honest and where it was flowing smoothly, and the parts where it wasn't. And we're going to break it all down. I want you to pay close attention to his body language, to the idiosyncrasies, the tempo of his speech, where he's looking, all of these different cues. What is body language? Is he leaning in? Is he pulling back? We're going to break it all down because I'm telling you, he's saying a lot without saying much at all. Now, I also would like you to do this little mental exercise where you imagine where you were mentally with your World War III virgin ears back in March of 2022, where barely anybody was talking about World War III, okay? That was the zygotic phase of World War III apoca talk. Even on this channel, we weren't talking about World War III much before that. So, only in the last 6 months has that really gone mainstream. But I want you to imagine hearing what he's saying now, then. Imagine the panic that he would have invoked in the population had he came out with this message at that point in time when nobody was even making the connection to NATO, to this conflict, with the exception of the more well-informed alternative talking circles that you probably came across on here. A lot of them have been shadow banned or put into jail and died in jails in countries. Let's not go there. But I think you know what I'm saying. So what I'm really trying to get at here is that this war has been progressing at such an incremental snail-like pace in terms of escalation, but it's like compounding interest. Now here we are, really on the precipice of NATO going to war with Russia, and nobody even cares. Okay, public interest is at an all-time low, whereas war, escalatory rhetoric at an all-time high. And what he is saying, this message proves it, because nobody believed that NATO was even involved at that point in time, with the exception of us. We all knew, but we are exceptions to the rule. Okay, here we go.
You need to have water, you need to have a radio on batteries, and you need to have a flashlight on batteries to make sure that you can survive the first 36 hours.
Okay, let's break that down. Now you can tell that this is a military man, spent his life in the military. God bless him. If you're a God-worshiping, God-fearing person, fine. You can tell that he does not understand this from the perspective of a civilian, and he did not rehearse this part of things. You can tell that these people, and this is indicative of the fact that they don't care about the civilian population generally, because his job is to win a war. His job is continuity of government. You are on your own when the shit hits the fan. He is trying to convince you that if they go to war with the Russians, all you need is a flashlight, radio on batteries, whatever the hell that means. We know what it means. English isn't his first language. I get that, but you know what I'm saying? He doesn't really provide, even the core details. What about medicine, food, water, means of self-defense, all these like core elements, shelter, right? How to heat your home in the winter. What are you going to do if it breaks out in wintertime? Anyways, you can tell that this is just reflective of the fact that the military doesn't care about the civilian population, generally speaking, because that's not their job. Okay, so he is just riffing here, and it's really bad. Now, think about the contradiction of warning people that they need to prepare for 36 hours when the war that he's talking about is bound to go nuclear. Like, there's no way NATO goes to war with the Russians and there isn't at least one nuclear weapon fired, right? So the idea that 36 hours worth of provisions is going to do anything for anybody, but he does say that this is a start. And that means that that was almost a slip too, that this is just a start of how we're going to ramp up this move to a war mobilization, because they know full well, even if we imagine a fantasy where Russia is just firing Iskander missiles into Europe and they are not armed with nuclear weapons, what the hell is 36 hours? The first instruction you want to give to people is stuff to do with civil defense. Where is the local bunker, the local fallout shelter, just like they have in Israel? Every building in Israel, it has to have a safe room. There has to be a safe place to retreat to. What the hell is a person going to do with 36 hours worth of food, flashlight on batteries or radio, whatever the hell he's talking about, right? So this is reflective of how little they care about us here in the West. In Eastern countries, they have underground cities. They're more collectivist than we are. Well, life might not be that good in the best of times. It's not that bad in the worst of times at the same time. Let's just hear what else he has to say.
Things like that. That's simple things. But it starts there.
It starts there. That's the realization. Simple things, right? And the way he says it, like patronizing, like simple things, like, come on, like as if you didn't know that, we were going to get into a big war with the Russians, even though we've been denying our involvement ever since.
Realization that not everything is plannable, not everything is going to be hunky-dory in the next 20 years.
Okay, not everything is plannable, which means that, and you notice how he's saying that, well, the Russians are going to attack us. We're not going to attack them, right? So it's not like we're planning on attacking anybody, but we can't plan for when they're going to attack us when you know full well that we're going to do some dumb shit to provoke the Russians. And that's exactly what's happening right now. If you don't think that's the case, all it would take would be one phone call from Joe Biden to Zelensky saying, stop shooting those frickin' drones into Russia, blowing up their facilities, targeting their nuclear facilities because we don't want to start a nuclear war, and it would stop. But it isn't, because we're provoking them. Okay, so when he says in the next 20 years, he says that knowing full well that that would mean the war could start tomorrow, and he could just say, I told you so. But then, of course, he tries to alleviate tension with that 20-year bracket. So he knows that he might have created a little bit of consternation amongst people because he's warning them that they should prepare, but then he says, well, 20 years. So if I'm the average person and I'm hearing that, and I hear, well, there might be a big issue in 20 years, because he knows that most people are going to hear 20 years. So they're going to think 20 years from now. He's saying in the next 20 years. And recall, all the leaders of Europe have been saying with the exception of, or exceptionally, I should say, the UK defense minister who came out in a public service address and basically declared that we need to go on a war footing. A lot of them have been saying this in interviews. The commanders of the militaries, the defense ministers, they've been advising their population in a low-key kind of way that we need to prepare for war with the Russians. They've been subtly injecting that into the discourse. And now here he is, one of the top dogs in NATO, just pouring it all on the table and saying 20 years. But interestingly, all of these leaders are giving a different date. Some are saying 12 months, 18 months. Germany, in the Bild article, in the leaked documents, say 18 months. Some people are saying 3 to 5 years, 5 to 7 years, 20 years. Really, he's saying it could happen this year, and we're going to take 19 years to rebuild. Let's just listen to this from the start once again, because there might be something else we pick up.
So you need to have a flashlight on batteries to make sure that you can survive the first 36 hours. Things like that. That's simple things.
And he says it almost as if we come from a culture where we've been encouraging this and people have been stubbornly resisting, but we're not. They've been telling us that nothing is wrong for the longest time, but here he is pretending to be frustrated that people aren't listening when, you know, they haven't been advising the population. In fact, they've been stigmatizing this behavior.
But it starts there. The realization that not everything is plannable, not everything is going to be honky-dory in the next 20 years. I'm not saying it is going wrong tomorrow.
And notice how he's looking away and he swallows after he says that part about it's not going to happen tomorrow.
Years. I'm not saying it is going wrong tomorrow, but we have to realize it's not a given that we are in peace. And that's why we have the plans. That's why we are preparing.
Okay, notice that now. Notice the conviction with he says that.
Given that we are in peace. And that's why we have the plans.
That's why we have the plans. You see the alacrity which he states that? It was more intense. It was more deliberate and confident. We have the plans. Now watch the change in tempo and what he says next.
In peace. And that's why we have the plans. That's why we are preparing.
You see how he slowed down there? Almost like he caught himself, right? Because what did he say back here? What did he say back here? He said, look at this. What a contradiction.
That not everything is plannable. Not everything is going to be honky-dory in the...
Not everything is plannable, right? And
that's why we have the plans. That's why we are preparing.
Holy shit. Okay, so that contradiction, right? See how he stammered when he says, not everything is plannable, because that's why we have the plans. They know exactly what is about to happen. And you can tell when he slows down in the tempo, because he realizes he caught himself, that maybe he let on a little bit too much.
That's why we have the plans. That's why we are preparing for a conflict with
looks down and, you know, it starts to pull back a little bit because, you know, that's an evasive maneuver, right?
Russia and the terror groups, if it comes to it, if they attack us.
And so that part there where he leans in and he's like, if they attack us, right? Because that's the bullshit that he was supposed to deliver. So he wanted to make sure that he emphasized that point. He realized that he was getting maybe into dark waters there if he was talking about preparing for going to war with Russia. That was probably something he wasn't supposed to say. He was probably supposed to use more neutral language like our adversaries or our enemies, but he said Russia and the terrorists, right? So he just lumps them all in the same basket, even though, you know, there's strategic partnerships there, but it's not as cut and dry as that.
But we have to realize it's not a given that we are in peace. And that's why we have the plans. That's why we are preparing for a conflict with Russia and the terror groups, if it comes to it, if they attack us.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
We're not seeking any conflict. But if they attack us, we have to be ready.
There you have it, folks. Your dumbass should have been preparing all along, according to Rob Bauer, one of the chairs of the NATO committee, Admiral Rob Bauer. I mean, what more confirmation does a person need at this point in time? The only thing above this is some major Western notable leader like Macron or Rishi Sunak or Joe Biden coming out and saying, okay, it's time to prepare for war. And maybe if they were to come out and say it, and I don't even think that would really have much an effect. At this point in time, I mean, we just seen the North Koreans claim that they detonated a weapon under the water. It's still, the jury's still out on whether or not they actually did a nuclear test. There's been earthquakes around one of their nuclear test sites, and this is a footnote. Even the amount of views, the amount of attention that got was almost nil. There was very little attention paid to it whatsoever. So people are, it's not even so much that people are exhausted, because there is this cult of preparedness developing, or culture, I should say, because you have people like Rick Ross now, who are, he's a rapper. He is coming out and disclosing that he has a bunker. And this is just a sign that it's becoming a part of pop culture, but I don't think people are truly taking it seriously yet. So let's hear what Rick Ross, the rapper, has to say.
I'm excavating. It's going down. Y'all know how I love real estate, and I usually like to build and go up. We going underground now. One time for all my doomsday preppers. Elon Musk, I see you. I saw your ground plans. I'm impressed, but guess what?
Okay, he's talking about Elon Musk bunker plans. Maybe Elon has a bunker, but I'll tell you guys this. Elon is most definitely a part of the team, okay? He's got a first-class ticket on Air Force One or one of the doomsday planes. He's part of the continuity of government plan. He's way too important to them to just be left to his own devices. This is probably why I haven't heard Elon talking about building a bunker, so I'm not sure what he's referring to when he's talking about this. But look, if I could advise any of the elites, do not, absolutely do not broadcast that you have a bunker. I know this is about to be trendy because Mr. Beast is probably going to do a bunker video soon and it's going to go super viral. And then after that, everybody's going to be doing the bunker thing. But please, this is something that you want to keep secret. There's no bragging rights about this. Take it from a guy who has lost his ability to be anonymous. I'm going to have to get some crazy plastic surgery. I'm going to have to get like the beard and all the Prigozhin type costumes at some point in time, and a bag of cash and some gold.
My bunker going.
Maybe talk to Zelensky about that other stuff.
I have a garage. My bunker gonna have wings. Huh? Yeah, we breaking ground. Huge excavations. You gotta have your fluids. I got a water maker, a machine that makes water out of H2O. I got a water maker. We got our can.
Makes water out of H2O. That's incredible. Actually, what he's referring to is very likely a system which runs on the same principle as a dehumidifier. I've done videos on dehumidifiers before. Yes, you can use a dehumidifier to extract water from the air. You have to complement it by increasing your mineral uptake because it will extract the minerals from your body, which is not good. It will hydrate you, but you can mineralize the water, and that's what companies are doing. There's these things on the market. They act like dehumidifiers, but they mineralize the water. The problem is they require energy. So you're looking at about at least 1,000 watt hours per hour, 1,000 watts per hour to run these machines. So unless you have a ample storage facility, and depending on the humidity of your space, that might not equate to a lot of water every hour. So yes, the capability is there. It's definitely something people should look into if they have an indefinite source of energy and they have a way to remineralize the water.
Goods. So if you're thinking the brothers ain't ready, We ready.
We ready. That's right. I'm glad I'm not the only one. So that's great that people are prepping, but maybe don't be so open about it. Now, just a few points about the news, then I'm going to let you guys go because I got better things to do. NATO is building bunkers, concrete bunkers along the Russian border. This is Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the Baltic states. What more do you need to know about getting ready for war than that? I mean, this is the Cold War all over again. Really, the Ukraine war is the Spanish Civil War 2.0. The Spanish Civil War is what preceded World War II. It's where the Germans did their training. Even if you look, almost very similar belligerents, both sides, one side the Soviets, one side the Germans. And everything was very similar, right down to the amount of casualties. The duration of the war was around 2 to 3 years until, the big war started. And it's starting to look like that Ukraine is really just an intelligence gathering operation. One very long form intelligence gathering operation so that NATO can acquire as much information as it can about Eastern weaponry and conduct as many probing operations as it can with these drones that it's enabling the Ukrainians to build and permitting them to attack Russia with, at the risk of escalation of nuclear Armageddon. Eventually, they're going to use all of this data to actually do some kind of decapitation strike, I think, because the amount of conventional forces we have, the only purpose they can possibly serve in this context is a post-nuclear occupying force, because we do not have the amount of troops required to fight trench warfare against the Russians. It's just not going to work. Okay, so the International Atomic Energy Agency chief, Rafael Grossi, said today, interestingly, that Russia is now remining their largest nuclear facility. Why would they be doing this now? If what we're hearing about the Russians pushing the Ukrainians back, why all of a sudden are they remining the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant? What could the purpose of this possibly be after months of this not being the case? This tells me that something big is about to go down, okay? And whether it's a Russian offensive, maybe it's a Ukrainian offensive, maybe the whole Ukrainian counteroffensive thing was just a feint maneuver for all we know. I know that sounds crazy, but these are people who aren't willing to, or are willing to throw human life at the problem, which is supposed to historically be the role of the autocracy, the authoritarian societies of the East. But we seem to have no problem just sending men to their deaths. Okay, so GPS jamming is at an all-time high right now, and it stems from Kaliningrad. So you can see, as this animation plays forward here, these red parts here, this is where we're getting a lot of GPS jamming. And based on what the experts are saying, it's stemming from here. A lot of it is originating. So the Russians are utilizing this GPS jamming technology. They're not sure how exactly they're doing it, but it causes problems with aviation, and it potentially suppresses NATO's capability to launch attacks, I presume. This could be part of the reason why they haven't done anything stupid yet. This could be the only thing that is keeping us from doing something stupid, but I don't know enough about it. For all we know, this is NATO doing GPS interference testing. But this is something we're going to have a guest on who knows a little bit about this, who's going to be able to answer our questions, hopefully, about how this factors into the geopolitical strategic calculus, all right? Now, these are the bunkers that Ukraine is now providing to some of their more luckier, privileged soldiers. I guarantee you this is not the norm. But I know that Ron was there for some consulting, and this looks a lot like an Atlas survival shelter. You have that corrugated steel, and it's one of the simplest ways to build a underground bunker, but these are actually pretty nice. They got good ventilation by the looks of things, lighting, phone, laptop. I mean, let's face it, this is for the officers, right? This is not for the average guy fighting on the front lines. In terms of what Iran is up to, they launched a satellite. Now, notice this scene here. This is clearly a bunker complex that they brought this thing out of. So that tells you, I mean, this is a pretty substantial facility in itself. Iran is not messing around. They keep all of their assets hidden. They are prepared for war. But to me, that looks a hell of a lot like a mobile ICBM. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know. I guess I understand why they wouldn't want to have it just out in the open, out of risk that it could be sabotaged, or, you know, Israel or the United States could take it out. But, you know, a lot of people are suspecting that this is more of a ICBM platform, potentially, as opposed to just a satellite. And you can actually see on the satellite the symbol that Hamas uses often, that Axis uses. So it's pretty clear. Iran is a huge country, man. Huge country. Mountainous, desert would be very, very difficult to take over, if not impossible, even with nukes. So this is what's going on in Russia. Most people do not realize that every hour, pretty much, and it's ramped up, and it's going to continue to ramp up. Every hour, there is another attack deep inside Russia. From St. Petersburg to Tula to Moscow to Bryansk to Belgorod, we are seeing just bombing of shopping malls, critical infrastructure, transformers, power stations, oil facilities. Like, just, this was a natural gas facility burning today. And all of this stuff, all of the Russia bros will just play it down and they'll be like, oh, it's no big deal. This is from today. Everything I'm showing you, and this isn't even all of it. All of these big eyesores, these giant fires that I don't even talk about anymore because it's become so commonplace. Eventually, this is going to provoke a massive response. I don't know what that response is going to be. Russia is being extremely patient with their deployment of nuclear weapons, but it's going to happen at some point in time. And Ukraine is not in a good way right now. I can tell you that much. This is an attack on Tula. The Russians claim that they actually intercepted this one, but it doesn't really look like an interception unless this was, yeah, that looked like it was a hit. But unless it was a wayward missile defense. So I think that's all we got to talk about. Oh, and the Americans are about to they're about to expand the military operation in Yemen. I don't know what they mean by that yet. I doubt they're crazy enough to attempt a ground offensive. That would require in the shuttling of troops, unless they're already, maybe that whole NATO exercise thing is a front for amassing troops for that purpose. But I doubt it. It likely means they're going to ramp up their airstrikes in the region because now the Houthis are planning a major retaliation. And apparently, according to, I think it was the Washington Post that indicated that they claim that there are Iranian and Hezbollah commanders on the ground advising the Houthis. Now, while there might be some truth to this, I am very critical of the language. Iranian backed this. Hezbollah backed this. It's always Iranian backed. Yet when we're talking about what we're doing over there, it's never, U.S. backed Israelis. It's never U.S. backed Saudis. It's always Iranian backed. So clearly they're moving us in that direction. We haven't entered the weapons of mass destruction narrative phase of this kind of thing yet, but that is coming. We're almost there. In fact, Rafael Grossi, the IAEA chief, said today that he thinks that Iran already has the capability to build 3 nuclear weapons. Some speculate that they already have them, which is why when they deploy systems like this, they have them on mobile platforms, because the concern is that now they have to master the delivery system. Recall that the North Koreans had the bomb before they had mastered the deployment system. I think we'd be naive to believe that at this point in the game, in terms of the strategic ties between the other three nuclear powers, be they China, Russia, or North Korea, that they would not assist the Iranians in some way, shape, or form. That's all I got for you guys today. Let me know what you think about Admiral Rob Bauer's statements. Looking forward to reading them. Thank you, guys.